Rudy, how are you today?
AJ, great to be here with you.
Thank you so much for coming here. I really want to
Pleasure.
jump into an exciting project you've been working on. What is Edifying Teachers and what inspired you to start this program?
Appreciate the question, AJ, and the opportunity to talk with you and your viewers. This is something that has been out in the public eye just for about 3 months now, but it's something that's been in development really for about 7 years. This is essentially a labor of love, really, and this is something that, even though in the public eye, again, folks are finally realizing how important it is to better support and retain our teachers, especially teachers of color. This is something that in the field of education, we kind of saw it coming. This is something that I've been researching in my doctoral research at Johns Hopkins University School of Education since 2015.
7 years. Okay. I thought you were going to say 2 or 3. I thought you were going to say the beginning of the pandemic. It really sparked something in you, but 7 years. And all the teachers that I've spoken to with the pandemic kind of exacerbating existing challenges and problems. Let's start back 7 years for a second. This is well before the pandemic. And like you said, we couldn't have predicted what has happened over the last couple of years. But why is it so crucial to get more teachers of color into the classroom?
Well, AJ, last school year, I finished up my 20th year in education, but my first 8 were actually in the classroom. So I was a high school math and computer science teacher. My own background is that I'm Mexican American. I grew up in the inner city of Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And so my first 8 years in education, I was a classroom teacher in what would have been my neighborhood public high school. And so I saw for myself the challenges that educators face each day. Eventually, over time, I moved into school and then district leadership. So back in 2014, I moved from Milwaukee out here to Maryland. So I'm just a little bit up the road from you. I came out here to serve Baltimore City public schools. And after about a year of getting settled in with my family, I decided to continue my education at Johns Hopkins, as I mentioned. And so with it being an EDD program, they ask you off the bat in your application, what is a problem of practice that you've seen from your experience in education that you really feel is important to address? And for myself, I said, you know what, we just have so much turnover going on in education. Do I want to look at that from the leadership lens or from the teacher perspective? And I felt like, and when it comes to student impact, the fact that some students in our challenged communities oftentimes have substitute teachers all year long in critical areas like math, I said, you know what, let me dig in on this teacher attrition issue. And we're losing teachers left and right. Even in the research field for the last decade, they've called it a revolving door. So I started researching that back in 2015, like I mentioned. First, they ask you to look at your context, right? So I was in Baltimore, like I mentioned, and I looked at the numbers and I said, wow, new teachers are only getting a couple of mentoring sessions a year. This is a real challenge. But as I started working more broadly in a state level position in Maryland, and then in the last few years have been working nationally, I said, wow, this is not just a Baltimore or Maryland issue. This is a national issue.
Right.
Like you mentioned, in terms of the pandemic, it's just presented many more challenges.
So 7 years ago, did you share with them that stat? I heard in the Best Kind podcast the other week when I was watching it that 40% of schools have 0 teachers of color.
Yeah, it's really staggering and hard to believe. And I think oftentimes, again, in certain communities, the discrepancy is not quite as large, but we know that the research, again, has shown that when students of color have teachers from backgrounds like theirs, they report feeling more cared for, more interested in their schoolwork, more confident in their teacher's ability to communicate with them, and more desire to pursue post-secondary education. And so really important that we address this issue and do it together, not in silos like we too often do in education.
But now we're looking at a real crisis here in the education system, especially in America, but everywhere with the ongoing pandemic. How do we stop this so-called bleeding when we think about staffing shortages in schools today?
AJ, the biggest discovery I had in my research was that we didn't so much have, a problem with recruitment, right? We're pretty good at recruitment, actually, getting people in the door. But again, what we're having trouble with is retaining them, right? And so, sometimes we're bringing folks, if you think about it, that 40% you mentioned, if you bring in a teacher of color to be maybe the one and only teacher of color in a building, how well supported are they going to be? Do we have support structures that are going to make them feel like they can be successful and that they can be successful? So a lot of the work that we've been trying to do is to make sure that the mentorship that folks need, the coaching that they need, the resources that they need are there, so that they can maintain the sense of what we call in the research self-efficacy, right? Folks that feel like when they come into the profession, I can make a difference in the life of a student and in my community. Too often they have reality shock once they start working and end up feeling like they can't be successful, and that's when they leave. So we're just really focused on doing a better job of retaining teachers.
What are the existing programs though? What are the mental health resources or the support systems that teachers currently have in place? And how are you trying to strengthen those resources?
Yeah, great question. And there's lots of conversation, obviously, these past few years about the notion of self-care, and obviously that's important that we attend to our respective mental health. But from our perspective, we feel that it's also really important that we improve the actual systems and structures. We know that it's not just that teachers can't handle it, that it's all that we should be putting it on their shoulders to figure things out. The system needs to improve and do a better job. And so what we're trying to do is, work with schools, work with districts, work with program partners to make sure that we're doing better by them and making sure that they have the encouragement that they need, the support that they need, the resources that they need. And so a lot of what we've been doing the last, several months has been also connecting with lots of different regional affinity groups that are working on recruiting and retaining teachers of color, whether it be specifically Black male educators or Black educators or Hispanic educators. But we know that there's lots of promising practices and programs out there, but we're also not doing a great enough job right now of working together. And so we're trying to be a little bit of that connecting and intermediary to really make sure that folks can know and share resources and work together, because this is a national issue and this is something that needs to be addressed at scale. It's good to do things, to serve 25 or 50 or 100 teachers, but when we're in need of hundreds of thousands of teachers, we really need to work together better. And so we're really excited about having that level of ambition.
You said something really important just there at the end. What is it like building a community of teachers of color when you need hundreds of thousands? How challenging is that?
Well, AJ, I think the challenge and the importance of the challenge really motivates us. But I think also we too often we underestimate the assets we have in our communities. We think about things from a deficit-based approach and looking for solutions from the outside. And so we have this mantra, nothing for us without us. And so we put teachers at the center and the heart of what we're doing. We feel that across the community, if we link up and realize that there's another famous quote we like from Schmoker that says, the answer is in the room, right? So you don't have to necessarily look to outside experts to get the answers. You need to oftentimes give teachers a chance to collaborate and share their best thinking and be able to connect with each other. And so what we're doing is, again, building this national network that will connect these different, again, local and regional efforts so that we can have this national network that can really support each other and move the needle.
What is your selling point for the teachers of color? Let's talk to a teacher who's feeling alone right now,
Yes.
who's feeling unseen or unheard right now, and who needs the help of edifying
Yes.
edifying teachers. What are you saying to them?
Yeah, unfortunately, teaching traditionally has been oftentimes a very isolating profession, where you're used to folks being able to kind of go in their classroom, maybe close the door and then figure things out on their own. And so we're trying to change the mold. We're trying to approach things from a perspective that really actually attends better to communities of color, the notion that we're going to take a collective approach and we're going to work together to support each other. And so what we're trying to do is make sure that it's not even just dependent on one good mentor, right? We're making sure that, if there's somebody fantastic that could support a new DC teacher, but is based in Minneapolis, hey, let's get them connected. If there's somebody who, maybe is an expert in math, and that's the support I need today, that I have access to that type of person. And so what we're trying to do is tap into the collective resources that we have in our communities and not just put it all on one person to be the end all and be all of support, but to have a support system. And so we're just approaching it very differently than has been approached in the past.
I like that, connecting those dots with teachers all across the country,
That's
DC,
right.
Minneapolis, New York to California, it doesn't matter.
Absolutely.
Teachers of color, minority teachers who are in the classroom, they need to be retained.
That's right.
So there's got to be one big goal for 2022. I know you're keeping your eyes on the prize, as Ms. Little taught you in third grade.
That's right.
What is that goal, and how are we going to accomplish that one goal for this year?
Yeah, appreciate the question. So we're in lots of conversations with different prospective regional and national partners. A lot of those are firmed up. A lot of those are in development. My goal right now is to be able to train up 1,000 mentors of color by the beginning of the school year, so that we can have those as a kind of, like I said, a backup support system to support different school and district partners that we're going to be working with in this coming year. And so really excited about that and what that can bring. And also just wanting to, cut through the noise of the fact that oftentimes we leave it up to teachers to have to dig through the internet and try to find a helpful resource. And sometimes they're having to come out of their pocket to pay for those resources. We don't believe that that should be the case. We make sure that we're helping curate those resources and saving them the time to find the best resources that they need in the moment.
I want to thank you so much for coming on today and sharing all the work that Edifying Teachers is doing, and the work that you're doing with this cohort of teachers to make our education system more diverse at a crucial moment in time. And I know we go back and forth on Twitter, and I've seen all of the posts you do, and you like all my posts as well. So I really appreciate your support. And if there's anything else I can do to support you and the teachers that you work with, here in the coming months, especially during the pandemic, by all means, I want to do it. My special guest, Rudy Ruiz, the founder and CEO of Edifying Teachers. He's right up the road in Baltimore if y'all want to find him. Is there anything else that you wanted to leave us with?
Well, AJ, I appreciate the opportunity. Again, this was, my vision, but it can't be accomplished alone. Teamwork does make the dream work. So we've got quite a bit of a team we've been building, a very diverse team. And so hoping that a couple of those team members might have an opportunity to have some follow-up conversation with you in the near future.
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to it, and looking forward to meeting in person one of these days and
Absolutely.
getting right to the core of this issue. Thank you
Yes,
so
sir.
much for being here.
It's been a blessing. Thank you.